But I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have 24 folks on the call. There might be a few more that can join us later. We'll see what happens. But good afternoon, everybody. I don't think I've met all of you, so let me introduce myself. I'm Mike Gratz, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence. I have been the Executive Director since March of this year. So this is my first time to kind of facilitate the examiner training process. So welcome to all of you. A special welcome to returning examiners and an even more warm welcome to the new examiners. There's quite a mix. We're about half and half between returning and new examiners. Today is the first of what will be 3 sessions in the next 2 weeks, and then 2 more sessions in November of what we hope will be online just-in-time training. So everything we're doing this year is very new. So whether you're a returning examiner or a new examiner, there's going to be a lot of new. This is new for all of us. Having to do this virtually is, I think, going to be a great experience. It's going to be really important to the future of RMPEx that we be able to always do examiner training virtually, because it just gives us the opportunity to take training everywhere that we serve. So I'm very excited to see how all this goes, and want to welcome you all in. Paul Grizzell is going to lead our training, and so I'm going to turn it over to Paul to get us started and walk us through how this day is going to work.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Honored to be back for another year of training with Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence. Last year was live training, this time live but virtual. And I will tell you, I would much rather be standing in front of you, getting to know each other at break, things like that. But I will tell you that this is the, the second state program that I've done virtual training with. And we found it actually worked pretty well. And the breakout sessions that we had to work with our teams worked out very well also. So while it's certainly different, I think you'll find that it ends up being effective. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, let's do the standard welcome and introductions. Now, with as many people as we have, it would be much easier if we were in live in a training room and I could point to people. But what I'd like to do is just go down the list of examiners, and I'd like you to give your name, what organization you work with, what state you're from, and how many years you've been involved with this. And if you're a new examiner, we want to be able to welcome you. So could we start with Catherine Harris? And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy. I am with Westera Credit Union, and we are headquartered in Denver, Colorado, and I am a new examiner.
Kathy, welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
Alicia. Maybe not on yet.
I'm searching real quick.
Oh, wait, there it is.
Hey, I'm Alicia Holgen. I work with Elevations Credit Union. I've been involved in RMPEx for about maybe 6 or 7 years, but I think overall I've probably been an examiner 3 times end to end. And I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Alicia. Natalie Cole.
I work with Natalie. I think she's coming on from another meeting.
Okay.
I'm just admitting her.
We'll wait on her. How about Yvonne Bridgman?
Hi, I'm Yvonne. I work with the Office of Engagement and Extension at Colorado State University, and I am a first timer.
Very good. Well, welcome. Benjamin Keller.
I'm
not seeing Benjamin
on the call.
Back to Benjamin. Sarah Shoup.
Hi, I'm Sarah Shoup, and I'm also with Elevations Credit Union in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm a new examiner.
Very good. Welcome. Bud Lawrence.
Hi, I'm Bud Lawrence. I'm with Campbell County Health in Gillette, Wyoming. This is my second year as an examiner. I've been involved with writing our different levels of our application for maybe 4 years or so.
Very good. Thank you, Bud. Barb Wright.
Barb will not be here today.
Oh, okay. Jeremy Campbell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Campbell, live in Bozeman, Montana. It's my second time working as a RMPEx examiner, and I work for, sorry, that's someone trying to either sell me a timeshare or get me out of one. And I work for Deco Group, which is based out of Jacksonville for the US, and we're a Swiss-French-based company globally.
Are you sure they weren't called about your auto maintenance warranty stuff? Come
That's
on.
probably the third option on the list, right? Glad to
Thank
be
you,
here.
Jeremy. Leslie Ness.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Leslie. This is about, I don't know, my 5th time with RMPEx. I also served a year as a national examiner. And I am the team lead for Team 1, which you just met everybody on Team 1. So I want to welcome all the newbies and all the returning examiners. And this is going to be as odd as 2020 has been, and but it'll be fun.
Very good. Thank you, Leslie. And as Leslie just said, those people that we already had introduced are on Team 1. So we'll be having breakout sessions each day where you break and do some work. So you all will be in the same breakout room together. Okay, Julie Pruitt.
Yep, I'm here. I work at Evans Army Community Hospital in managed care, and I think this is the 4th year I've been with RMPEx in Colorado.
Glad to have you back, Julie. How about Jeff Tompkins?
Hey, Jeff Tompkins with Westera Credit Union here in Denver, and I am brand new to it this year.
Welcome.
Thank
Glad
you.
you're with us, Jeff. Nadia Fifi, is that how it's pronounced?
You got it. Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Nadia Fifi. I work for Veterans Affairs, and I'm also a first-time examiner.
All right, welcome, Nadia. Jacqueline McCauley.
Hi, everyone. So I'm currently with a company called Emerge out of California. It's a tech company. I'm a consultant to various tech companies and VC groups out there, but I live in Parker, Colorado. And this is my first time here. Thank you.
Very good, welcome. Tom Krings.
Hi, I'm Tom. I work at Elevations Credit Union, and I am a first-time examiner.
All right, welcome.
Nice to see you got a visitor with you, Tom.
Yeah, this is Cecilia's first time too.
Very good. Matt Barrett.
Yeah, Matt Barrett with School District 49 down in Colorado Springs, and this is my first time.
Thanks, Matt. John Gannon.
I don't believe I've let John in yet.
Okay.
So I don't think he's here yet.
Patricia McGilton.
Yeah, she's going to be late, so she's not here yet.
Okay. Eric Newport.
Eric Newport. This will be my 3rd year with RMPEx. I am definitely the furthest away. Go Hoosiers. I had love everything about what RMPEx is doing, and we've made some good positive changes for this year, so I'm very excited. Like Leslie, welcome to everybody on Team 2, new and returning, and I think we do have one more, Paul, right?
We do. Sydney McLeod.
Everybody, I'm Sydney McLeod. I'm also with Westera Credit Union based out of Denver, and this is my first year.
Very good. And Eric, are you the team lead of this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those are the people who are going to be on Team 2. So welcome to all the new people on that team, and returning examiners, thank you for coming back. Karen Jensen, we're moving into team 3 now. Karen Jensen.
Yeah, I am Karen Jensen. I also work for Westera with Sydney and Jeff and Kathy in Denver, Colorado. This is my first year.
All right, welcome, Karen. Julie Ricart.
Yeah, it's Record.
Record, thank you.
Julie Record. I'm a self-employed CPA. I do work all the way from individual tax work all the way up to doing auditing work for public companies. And this is my first year with RMPEx.
All right, thank you, Julie. Naheem Matab.
And I don't believe Naheem is on the call.
Okay. Emily Shea.
Hi, my name's Emily Shea, and I'm also with Elevations Credit Union, which is out of Broomfield, Colorado, and this is my first year as an examiner.
All right, welcome, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, Ferenc Dobai, is that pronounced right?
Yeah, Ferenc, but I go by my middle name, which is Attila Dubay. I'm an independent contractor, an independent consultant, just left a 16-year career with the Fortune 500. It's my second year involved in Baldridge. Last year I was a national examiner, and this year I'm with RMPEx. Excited to be here.
Very good, glad to have you here. Pete Dupre.
Yeah, greetings everyone. I'm a returning examiner. I was fortunate to serve with Jim Ginley in an exam last year. I was also on team 3. Welcome everyone from Elevations. And I will be your team leader for team 3.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Jim Ginley.
Hi, I'm Jim Ginley. I have my own company, Jim Ginley Consulting. I live in Littleton, Colorado, and I am returning. I helped out up in a review last year with Pete and Bud and Patty's not back on the phone yet. Great to be back.
Very good. You know, that's one of the great things about this is on these evaluation teams that you're on, I found that I've made, gosh, a whole lot of business contacts and just developed some good friendships through it. Susan Staples.
Hi, I'm Susan Staples. I'm the IT and Innovation Manager at the High Plains Library District, and this is my second year with RMPEx in Baldridge.
Very good. We're glad you're back, Susan. Vanessa Buck.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa. I'm also with Western Credit Union located in Denver, and this is my first year.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us, Elizabeth. Or Vanessa, sorry. Elizabeth Alden.
And I think Elizabeth is not on this call as well.
Okay. Hardy Kaufman.
Those two folks dropped out at the bottom of the list there, Paul. So you've got the whole list of people that signed up at the bottom of the list dropped off. So you can.
Okay.
I think we're done.
Okay. Is there anybody that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves? Okay. All right. Well, welcome to all of you. And I'll just give you a quick little more intro on me. I have my own consulting company that works on organizational performance excellence. I like to, our mission is to help organizations focus, align, and accelerate their performance excellence initiatives through effective use of performance excellence models. And so I'm a master examiner with Baldridge. I've been a Baldridge examiner for 22 years now. I train Baldridge examiners. I also do work with the European Quality Award as a certified advisor and trainer. And I'm what's called the foreign evaluation expert with the China Quality Award. I accompany their site visit teams as they conduct site visits, and as much as a translator can translate to me, that's one of the most interesting things that I do. Also a member of the ASQ Organizational Technical Committee, and co-author with Mark Blasey of Insights to Performance Excellence published by ASQ about using Baldrige and other integrated management systems. I do want to talk about some of the changes we have in training, and as Mike said, and as is very evident, first of all, we're using a live application during training. The purpose of this is to minimize non-value added work. And while you could say, you know what, was it really non-value added? Well, those of you who are experienced examiners know that in the past, we have gotten a case study, and then you were to go into the case study and develop the key factors, typically for a couple of the categories, find strengths and opportunities for improvement. And what we have found is that lots of times for a new examiner, you went through 20 or 30 hours of prep work to get ready for training. Then you got to training, and within a few hours, you realized, I did this all wrong. So what we're doing is we're actually working on a live application now. We did require you to do some pre-work, listening to the videos, as well as doing the key factors work. And I'm real interested in finding out from all of you whether you like this model at the end of it or not. But what I like is by the end of training, you don't then sit and wait for 2 weeks to get an application to start reviewing. You will have already gotten some work done on the application, as well as gotten to know your team members and gotten some coaching for new examiners from those experienced examiners. I will tell you, this has been tested in other programs. I'm also a trainer and a judge for the American Healthcare Association, where this year we had over 1,500 applications from long-term care organizations, of which about 55 of them were the full 55-page narrative. And we wanted to do everything we could to make that process work as effectively as possible. And examiners seem to, I'm not going to say seem to, the feedback we got was that examiners really appreciated the fact that the work that they did was work that was going to be valuable to the applicant, as well as instead of just practice. Now, it does require more of a mentor role by team leaders and experienced examiners. So when you go into your breakout sessions, team leaders and experienced examiners, we'd really like you to kind of buddy up with the new examiners and answer any questions they may have and help build that confidence. The second part of a change in training is virtual training instead of live training. Zoom platform with the breakout rooms. As Mike said, it does allow RMPEx to provide training to examiners in your broad market of Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana, without requiring traveling to Denver for that training. Please be patient. This is something new. I have conducted this training by Zoom in the past. Mike and I have done a little practicing of how to do the handoffs, and it's worked well. If we do have any glitches, please be a little patient with us on it.
So first glitch, Paul, I'm going to stop you for just a second because Natalie Cole has joined us, and we skipped over her because she was right at the very beginning. But I wanted to give her just 30 seconds to introduce herself like everybody else, so everybody knows who Natalie is as well.
Natalie, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself with who you are, where you work, how many years, and what state are you in? Mike, I'm not seeing her.
I can see her, but I can't hear her. But Natalie, I can see you, and I can see you're trying to speak with us. But I guess we'll pause, and as long as we can communicate through chat, if you have questions, put them into the group chat area, and I'll see them there, and we'll try and get them posted, and we'll try and figure out why we can't hear you. But go ahead, Paul.
Very good, Natalie. thank you for being with us. And so a few kind of serious, kind of not serious ground rules. Patience with the new process, please. Patience with the technology as we work through any glitches we have. Patience with working from home. And you know, if there's one thing that I have kind of appreciated about the number of Zoom, GoToMeetings, WebExes, team meetings that I've been on, is when we're working from home, I've had participants in meetings have a cat walk in front of the screen. I've had dogs bark. I've had kids with us. Tom, it's really nice to see your daughter with us. And frankly, that makes things a little more personal for us. And so please don't apologize if something like that happens. That's just kind of the new normal. And frankly, it gives us a good look at your personal life in addition to our business life. The next bullet is supposed to be healthy comfort with ambiguity. Anytime I train examiners, I tell them that they need to have a healthy comfort with ambiguity, because being a Baldrige examiner or a RMPEx examiner is not like being the kind of person who goes in and does a regulatory assessment where you've got a check sheet and you're checking to be refrigerators are at the right temperature and different things like that. Check, 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 black and white. That's not what this process is like. It requires you to put your thinking cap on, and you will be stretched in many ways in putting together this feedback report for a very good organization. So, returning examiners and team leaders, as I said before, adopt a coaching and mentoring mindset during training. We have a lot of new examiners, which is great. And we want those new examiners to leave here saying, I might be a little confused, but at least I know I'm comfortable in getting a hold of a team leader or a returning examiner to help answer any questions I might have. New examiners, don't hesitate to say you don't understand something. Ask questions, and if you have a question about something, I guarantee you're probably not alone in having that question. So we want this to be an open dialogue. I'm going to ask Mike to kind of keep an eye out for any questions or chats that may come in, and we'll be sure to answer all of those questions. When you get to the end of this, new examiners, you may say, I didn't know that's what I was getting into, but I'm going to make a promise to you that through the whole process, this isn't going to just be something that you're an examiner. This ought to be a personal development opportunity that you go back with some new knowledge of how to look at your own organization. So let's start going into what we're going to be talking about. And for some reason, my mouse is not working. There we go. Okay, the RMPEx process. The major steps for examiners in this process is you do pre-examination phase, which is doing your pre-work, having the teams formed, receiving your assigned application, and knowing what you need to do. Training is part of the pre-examination phase. Then, the way we're doing it now, that pre-examination phase kind of melds a little with the independent review, where you individually do an examination, an assessment of the application, look for the strengths and opportunities for improvement. Then you move into what's called the consensus review phase, which is where you as a team, everybody has a different responsibility for gathering all that input from individual examiners and moving into what we call a consensus report. One report based on what everybody has put together. And then finally, some of you will be going to site visit and preparing a site visit plan, and conducting the site visit is a whole different experience. And you know, one thing I do want to let you know, do not feel like you have to take notes on what is on the screen. You will get a copy of of this entire presentation, and in the quick reference guide, which is a reference that's provided to you, there's an index of all the slides in here. So when you want to, when you think, you know what, I want to go back to that comment writing section, just look in your quick reference guide and you'll be able to find what slides those are. So don't feel like you need to take notes on what's on the presentation. If something else that I talk about is of interest, go ahead and take notes on that, but you'll get a copy of this. Okay, overall learning objectives for what we're going to do is we want you to be comfortable with preparing an effective feedback report with your team in accordance with what RMPEx requires. We do want you to be able to differentiate about the various levels of what we call learning in the processes utilized by applicants. We want you to be able to score applications using what we call the scoring calibration guidelines, which you watched a video on in advance of this, and we'll spend some time going over that during our training. What we really want to be able to have is what we call comment score alignment. When that feedback report, that final feedback report goes to the applicant, we want them to be able to look at the comments and look at the scores that you assign and feel comfortable that, that the score is accurate based on the strengths and opportunities that you found as a team within that organization. We want you to be aware of and adhere to program deliverables and deadline dates. I will tell you that the way to make friends in this program is meet the deadlines. The way to not make friends in this program is to miss the deadlines and then go silent as to why you're missing those deadlines. So if you are going to miss a deadline for some reason, please get in contact with your team leader and let them know what's going on. We realize that life happens, okay? So get in touch with your team leader and tell them what happens. The worst thing is when somebody just goes silent for 2 weeks and progress for the entire team is impacted by that. So timeliness, meeting deliverables is really important as an examiner in this process. Number 6, believe it or not, I think you will have fun. I've met some of the best people, the people who are focused on performance excellence in organizations. And as I said earlier, my guess is that you'll make some good friendships through this and some good business contacts. Okay, what we're going to be doing is essentially following this process of working on live applications. We're going to be working on key factors and populating the table of expected results to start with today. We're going to be talking about process elements in writing process feedback comments today. And we might get into some scoring of process criteria items today. Through our training, we'll be talking about comment score alignment and consistency. We'll talk a little bit about consensus review, but that will happen in a different training. That's one of the benefits of this process, is that we're able to break up the training. Frankly, I kind of like the 4-hour blocks instead of 2.5 days of training. Consensus review training will actually happen just before you move into consensus. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? We're going to talk about results elements. We're going to talk about writing results, feedback, scoring results items, and again, ensuring comment score alignment using the table of expected results that we're going to get started on today. And we're going to talk some towards on our third half day about executive summary and key themes. The executive summary and key themes is what you find as being the most important things, the things that if you were in the elevator with the CEO of the organization, that you would want to be able to say, well, here are your key strengths and here are your key opportunities for improvement. We want to be sure that those are rock solid, that they're effective, and that you feel proud when those go in, that CEO would really understand the breadth of what you've looked at for their organization. So application review process is essentially follows this. We've talked about it, but the review of the organizational profile and coming to consensus on key factors. That's going to be the primary thing that we work on today, and partially populating the table of expected results. You will then, after training, move into independent review of process items, consensus review of process items, and then as a team, reach consensus on the table of expected results, columns 4 through 8. You'll understand that at the end of training. And then you'll go into consensus review of results items, completion of the table of expected results and comments, and then develop that executive summary. Now, you're going to see this logo throughout the training. And you know, I realize that you're going to look at some of these PowerPoint slides and you're going to say, wait a minute, you're never supposed to have any more than 6 or 8 lines of text on a slide. This open book logo is saying, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that slide, but what I want you to have as a resource is what's described in there. So again, when you go to your quick reference guide, there's an index to this. So when you're kind of puzzled and you think, now what was that about effective comment writing, our rules of writing comments, you'll know right where to go, and there will be enough detail there for you to quickly scan through and understand what we were talking about. So look at that as being a reference material, not something that we're just using for training. Let's move into the organizational profile and the key factors worksheet right now. The general process flow for each application that you're looking at is, first of all, read the organizational profile. There are really 3 parts to every application. There's the organizational profile, which essentially answers the questions, who are we and what's important to us? That's a context setting part of the application. The second part of the application is what we call the process categories, and that's categories 1 through 6. And what we're looking at there is the responses by the applicant that say, here's what we do and how we do it. And what we want you as an examiner to do is review those process categories in the context of what the applicant has said, here's who we are and here's what's important to us. And then finally, the results category answers the question of, were we successful? All it is results. It isn't talking about how we do things. It's talking about, here are the results that are tied to our process categories. So 3 parts to the application. The organizational profile that says, here's who we are, here's what's important. The process categories that say, what do we do and how do we do it? And finally, the results category that says, were we successful? What you're looking for is that story to be told. With an applicant like you're going to be assessing, you're going to have a really good application to look at. They understand that connection between those 3 parts of the application. I did training earlier this week with another state that has 4 applicants, and all of them, it's their first application, and you can tell they're just not getting it with that connection. So you all are going to be really challenged to, you won't be challenged to find strengths. You will be challenged to find opportunities for improvement. And being able to understand that first part of the application, the organizational profile, will help you with that, because you will be completing the second step of this, the key factors worksheet. So the applicant provides that OP to help you understand them, to clarify the scope of the assessment. Many times there may be a large organization of which a part of the organization is applying. So that helps clarify the scope of what they're looking at. You will use that organizational profile to develop key factors, as you heard about in that video about organizational profile and key factors. What this really helps you do is customize the feedback to the unique applicant characteristics. So if you use those key factors well in assessing the rest of the application, the feedback that you provide will be essentially customized to what the applicant has said is important to them. So completing the key factors worksheet, what we want you to do is essentially take the summary of what's in that organizational profile and put it into short bullets, short statements that you're able to move into that scorebook and comment matrix to say, this is something we need to be aware of with this organization. So those things will be, who is our applicant? What is it trying to accomplish? What's important to its success? What's important to its customers? What are its strategic challenges and strategic advantages, which you will use in multiple areas? And how do we ensure that our feedback report will be most relevant to that applicant? Now, there are other sources of key factors. When you read the organizational profile, they're answering questions in the criteria book that start with the word what. So what questions are basically saying, give us the facts. When you get into the categories 1 through 6, the process categories, most of the questions start with the word how. So when they ask a how question, they're looking for a process. When they ask a what question, they're asking for a fact. Tell us what your main business is. Tell me, what are your strategic challenges? Tell me, what is your competitive situation? And in categories 1 through 6 are a few what questions that you can talk in your team and determine, should we bring these into our key factors? And those are things like, what are your organization's key strategic objectives in item 2.1? What are your key performance measures, which is in 4.1? What key benefits do you offer your workforce? That's in 5.1. And what are your organization's key work processes? And what are your organization's support processes? Those are things that you might want to bring into your key factors, just to keep those front and center as important factors as you read the application. So you've seen the video. That's what we talked about with key factors and the organizational profile. Are there any questions about that before we move into talking about results and the table of expected results?
Can I just ask a quick question of everybody? Was everybody able to access the videos okay? And did you have any trouble watching them? I'm getting a lot of positive head shakes. I just want to make sure. We've been trying to figure out the best place to put them. You should be able to access them via the website now, but I just want to make sure everybody was in fact able to see the videos and that were they helpful? Good. I'm getting a lot of good head shakes. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I described the application, and I said that the last part of it is results. So you're probably thinking, well, why are we jumping to results right now? It's because as you're going through and developing your key factors, and as you start reading the rest of the application, we want you to start developing what we call the table of expected results. Examiners develop this list of results that the applicant has identified as important and what's required by the criteria, and what the applicant says they are measuring. So those are three sources for results. So the applicant says it's important, the criteria asks for it, and the applicant provides it in the back, essentially saying this is important. But as you're reading through the application, we want you to identify those things that you think should be in the results to measure, were they successful? So for instance, in the organizational profile, one of the questions in P.1A3, the workforce profile, is what are the key factors of engagement for employees? What is it that people appreciate about working at our organization? What's important to employees? So typically there are 3, 4, 5 different things listed. Okay, when you see that, that's an expected result that you expect to see in the results category to say, in the results from their employee engagement survey, we're expecting to see something that says, well, how well does the organization do at communicating with the employees? Another one might be something like a relationship with coworkers. So in the table of expected results that you're going to be working on at the break today, you would list those things and say, I expect to see this in survey results or whatever they might have to show what their performance is on this. Now, we do want you to particularly look for important results. And let me give you an example. I used to do some work with the Army, and I know there are some people here in the military, but one of the things that that they were measuring as was they found that a lot of the new soldiers, when they got a few paychecks, they went out and bought a motorcycle, and they had lots of motorcycle accidents and even fatalities. So they started a training program on motorcycle safety, and their measure of that was the number of people who participated in the training, but they never did measure injuries and deaths or accidents from motorcycles. So we want you to look for those results that aren't just, for instance, as I heard someone once say, butts in seats for training, but did the training make an impact on what they were being trained on? So we're looking for outcomes, not necessarily processes, although those of you who are experienced examiners know that in 7.1, we are looking for some process measures to ensure that they're looking at those in-process sorts of things. The table of expected results, and actually I just sent that is actually embedded in the scorebook and comment matrix, but I did send a copy of that just an hour or two ago to everybody, a separate copy if you wanted to use that during our break. So expected results come from the organizational profile, the narrative in categories 1 through 6, and in the criteria. This is what it looks like. And you can see at the top, what I have done is I have made this a generic table of expected results, because there are for new examiners, there are 3 different types of criteria. There's the business and nonprofit criteria, which you will be using for the applicant this year, that talks about product and process results. The healthcare criteria, which differs just a little from the business criteria, but what it really does is it uses the word patients and other customers instead of customers, like in the business criteria. The education criteria, similar to the healthcare criteria, a little bit of change in language and more focused on talking about students rather than patients or customers. So it's generic, but this is the sort of thing you might see. And this is from, I have a lot of healthcare examples in here, but On the left-hand side, you'll see the 3 columns that are highlighted in yellow. And that's what we're going to have you filling in as part of the exercise today. But that's the first thing you fill in, as you're reading the organizational profile and the process categories, is you fill in the title of the expected result, the reference in the application where it came from. This is real important as you work through the consensus process. So when others on your team see your work, they want to be able to know, okay, they talked about call light response time on page 13 of the application, and then you put a category 7 reference that says, here's where that belongs. New examiners, as you get familiar with the criteria, you'll start being able to say, oh yeah, 7.1A1, I know what that is. 7.1B1, yeah, that's process measures. So you'll gain confidence in that as you work through the process. So this is what the table of expected results looks like. And you want to fill out the 3 columns on the left-hand side before you ever look at category 7, the results category. So first 3 columns, here are the most common places to find it. The workforce key drivers of engagement, like I talked about earlier from the organizational profile. The regulatory requirements from the organizational profile. Key requirements for customer, patient, or student groups from the organizational profile. The strategic advantages and challenges from the organizational profile. And then getting into the actual process categories. Many times an applicant will have a table in 2.1 that lists their strategic objectives and goals. There are lots of important results in there. In 4.1, measure, analysis, and improvement of organizational performance, many times there's a table there because the criteria ask, what are your key performance measures? What are the most important measures that you're looking at? That's a right place to find expected results. And then in 6.1, work processes, the work process requirements that they list are things that many times are the expected results. Now, just in the narrative, in 1 through 6, you will find lots of other expected results. So, as I said earlier, do these first 3 columns before you even take a look at the category 7 results that they've provided. We want you to use good judgment on this. A common error is to underpopulate the number of expected results. And what typically happens there is if a person just goes right to category 7, the results category, and says, okay, these are the results they provided. I'm going to put those down as the expected results. And what you have done is you have missed an opportunity to pass a message on to the applicant that, you know what, you said this was important and you didn't provide a result. Therefore, you may be missing something that is very important. You said a process was important, but you don't have a result to say how you did at an outcome from that process. But at the same time, we don't want you to overpopulate the number of expected results. You know, a lot of times people come up with expectations that aren't truly results. I've seen somebody in their table of expected results list disaster manual. Okay, what kind of results can be provided to say disaster manual is effective? Now, you know, the effectiveness of your fire drills, those kind of measuring the success of the things that are embedded in the disaster manual may be good measures in particular areas. Number of reports, significant segmentation until higher scoring ranges. Now, with the applicant that all of you are going to be working with, you are going to be in those higher scoring ranges. So segmentation is something that you will be looking for. And results that aren't within the facility's control. I've also seen people put, for instance, if a supplier provides Six Sigma training to your organization, you know, they want to see something with that supplier of Six Sigma training, of how many people they train, things like that. Results that aren't within the facility's control is not something that you want to be putting in the table of expected results. So I just want to emphasize here, specifically notate the overall requirement reference where you will put that. And then when you do get into category 7, you're able to kind of put the check mark to say, yes, they've got these, and no, they don't. The importance of identifying those missing results eventually to the applicant, again, is to say, you know, you said a process was important, and we're not seeing anything in here about that. Some important aspects about this, keep in mind basic versus overall versus multiple criteria. That we'll talk a little bit more about basic versus overall versus multiple, but with your organization that you all are looking at, you will be looking at the basic criteria, which when you look at each item, like 1.1 senior leadership and 1.2, the title and the question after it is the basic question. And so you're going to be looking for results to support every one of these. The basic is the title question. Overall is the questions in bold in the criteria, and then multiple criteria go into even more detail in just regular text, non-bolded text. When should segmentation of results be expected? It should be expected when you are at the higher scoring ranges, which your organization will be at those high scoring ranges. So you can expect segmentation of results. Characteristics of good expected results, typically an outcome from the processes of work, and as we talked about earlier, a key factor from the organizational profile, category 2, 4, 6, or elsewhere in the narrative. So very quickly, we're going to put this into use and start working on consolidating a key factors worksheet and populating columns 1 to 3 of the table of expected results. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take a 15-minute break, and then when you come back, you are going to be in your team rooms, breakout rooms, with the team that you'll be working moving forward after training. What I want you to do is have your work on the key factors worksheet available, and I'd like you to work through as a team to come up with a key factors worksheet that you can say, as a team, we have agreed that these are the key factors. As you're doing that, I'd like you to start populating the table of expected results based on information you have found in the organizational profile. My suggestion for how to do this is to have one person have the key factors worksheet up on the screen in the breakout room. If you haven't been in breakout rooms, you can have the screen on the left-hand side, and then you'll see all your teammates on the right-hand side. I'd like to have one person be working on the table of expected results, either in the scorebook and comment matrix or on the separate TOER that I sent earlier today to everyone. And here's the way I'd like you to do that, is as you're going through the key factors and identifying and saying, yes, that is an important key factor, I want you to be saying, So should we be expecting a result for this? Now, one thing, I'll give you an example in P.1a when it talks about what business, what the applicant does. There may not be a result there, but when you get to P.1a3, the workforce profile, you are going to be seeing those key engagement factors, which certainly would be in the table of expected results. So I want you to be accomplishing both of these things at the same time. Does that make sense? And I'm going to give you 1 hour in that team room. Any questions before you move off to a break?
Paul, logistics question. How do we initiate the team breakout rooms? Sorry if I missed something in a meeting notice or whatever.
No, when you come back from our 15-minute break, you will have a different set of people that are on the screen with you. You will be coming back into your breakout room.
So I'll be initiating the breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you.
And what I've heard from the teams that have done this earlier this week, they said, man, that's a really slick way to do things. That's even better than when we do it in person. So I'm hoping you all feel the same way about it. But what I'd like you to start doing is coming up with the 1 key factors worksheet. One thing I do want you to be cautious of, a lot of times people just start putting every fact that they provide. But I want you to be thinking about, is this an important thing for this applicant? Sometimes with organizations that are just getting started, I can remember one application I saw that started out in their organizational profile by saying, in 1843, 3 nuns left Switzerland to go to Wisconsin to start a hospital, and an entire column of the history of the organization. There was nothing in there that ended up in the key factors. It was interesting, but it wasn't important for the assessment. So I want you to be cautious to put things in that you believe are important and that really answer the questions in the organizational profile section of the criteria. Okay? So it is now 2 o'clock in I think everybody's area. We're going to come back we will come back at 3:15 Mountain Time. Okay?
No.
I'm in Minnesota, so I'm an hour ahead of you.
2:15 Mountain Time.
2:15 Mountain Time.
3:15. 15 minutes of break. At 2:15 Mountain Time, we want you back in your rooms. Okay? And I will be coming to your rooms. I'll be stepping into your rooms and just asking if there are any questions, and then I'll leave if there aren't. Okay? Off to breaks.
Hi, this is Natalie. I'm just testing my audio. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Natalie, I hear you loud and clear.
Oh,
thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Are you getting it, Mike?
I'm having to re-enter them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is pretty slick, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I've done it this way before. I mean, obviously you can do it, but why did it not work?
Yeah. When you get a solution to that, let me know.
Yeah, well.
Hey, Mike and Paul, this is Jim Ginley.
Hey, Jim.
Do we physically leave here, like hit the leave button and then come back? Is that how that goes?
No, you stay right here, and when you come back, you'll be in a room.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yep. Paul, do you want me to just go ahead and open up the rooms? I think I got them all here.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So everybody's been invited to join and they're disappearing.
Okay.
So now, are you able to see where you want to go?
Dang it, I don't see a way for me to do that.
So let me go back here. Oh, do I want to change the host to Paul Grizzell? Yes.
Oh, very good. There we are.
Okay. So now, I'm thinking I can't get in. Yeah, so it's not allowing me to get in as a co-host. So I'm going to throw this one all to you, and I'm going to be sitting it out, I guess.
Okay, so, and what I find, Mike, is go into those rooms and they don't need any help. So there might be one question, but I go in and I don't want them to think I'm micromanaging them. So I go in, ask if there are any questions after about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then I'll come out to you. How did you, okay, so if I am now the host.
So I pulled up the participant list on my right side, and it should show just me and you in this call.
Yes.
Oh, and you know what? I set those things up for 60 minutes, and the 60 minutes started when I clicked the button, and I should have set them up for 75 because you want them to have an hour after their 15 minutes.
You know what?
So I can't get, can you kick it back to me for a second? Make me the host again?
Yes, I was going to ask, how do I do that?
I think if you go, can you see me in your participant list?
Yes.
If you go up and where the more button highlight on the right side of my name, and it should say more.
Yep, there we go.
And if you kick it back, now it looks like I've got it all. So now where do I go? Son of a gun. I'm going to close rooms for a second. They're going to close in 60 seconds. I'm going to change the number, and then I'll reopen the rooms.
And
this will confuse the heck out of everybody, but we'll see if this works.
You know, you might have to enter everybody in again.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah.
There's a problem with the breakout sessions. They're ending in like 30 seconds.
No, I know they are. I did it intentionally. I'm planning to put them back out there.
Okay.
You're supposed to have 15 minutes off. I'll explain to you later what happened. But
okay.
There's something I don't like, and I'm trying to change it.
Just make this shit up as you go. It's all right.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. I'm trying to figure out how I got you back there and nobody else.
I jumped back on.
Okay. All right. So now, okay, now I got everybody again. There we go. So I want. All right, so I'm going to set them for 75 minutes, Paul. Or no, not 75. We want 60 plus. What do we have left? We're starting at 3:15.
You know what? Just go ahead and make it 75 because I can close them at any time.
Okay, got it. So I got them set for 75.
So what happens is at the end of it, at like,
and now everybody's going back out again. It did not delete them, by the way. It brought them right back into the rooms.
Good.
So now what I have to do is make you the host.
Can you try again, just making me co-host and let me,
yeah.
Anything else I can do?
I thought I had you as co-host.
Yeah, it just.
So you still show up at the top of my list as unassigned.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna have to make you host.
Okay.
So you're the boss now.
Okay.
But I think we're back functioning the way I want. So now it should not kick off until you close it.
Okay.
Like I said, every time I've gotten on a call to talk about virtual site visits, this is the part of it that I think is the biggest management issue. Who and how do you create all these sessions?
Yeah, and that whole pre-assigning, I just can't figure. I found the instructions on how to do it, but I think I need to watch one of the videos because there's something we're missing.
Did it right, and yet it's not there.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and study it some more. By the way, just for the record, it didn't occur to me until these popped up. Elizabeth Alden, she actually left Elevations Credit Union, and I have no way to reach her, so I'm assuming she's actually dropped off.
Okay. All right.
And I'm trying to remember, I think Ben Keller is the guy that notified us yesterday that he was going to have to drop off because he'd been in a motorcycle accident 5 weeks ago and he's still recovering.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that was him when that name popped up today. And Leslie knows because she responded to him as well. He said he was hoping to do it, and he said he just hasn't recovered enough to commit the time. And I think that was yesterday. I just didn't take him off the list. And Barb had told me she was going to be gone today. So the only one I think we're missing is John, and he happens to be a surgeon. And he was one that wanted to know if they were going to be recorded. And I said, yes. So I'm wondering if he's just planning to watch the recording.
Okay.
So
Did I ever tell you about the guy that I worked with that was a surgeon? I worked with a children's hospital in Fort Worth. And this guy was on the executive team, and his title was Chief Effectiveness Officer. And he had a 50-50 role. He was leading their performance excellence effort, and he was a pediatric craniofacial surgeon.
Oh my goodness.
So I was down there one time and he wasn't able to meet with me in the morning. So we got together for lunch and I said, just passing the time, I said, so what did you do this morning in surgery? And he said, well, we had a patient that has the elephant man syndrome, and I opened up his face, peeled it open, relocated his eye orbit up 2 inches, and all this stuff. And I was just like, I don't even know how to respond to somebody.
Yeah, you don't even know how to ask questions
like that.
It's just sheer amazement at that point.
Yeah.
Well, I have an hour to kill.
That's right.
Well, I can't do anything. Well, I'll be anxious to hear. I've got, yeah, it's a wild day. I tried to drop into Penn Works, but I couldn't get in. I'm going to try and drop into some of that tomorrow. I just got a Paul Grizzell to everyone reminder.
Yep.
So if they have questions, can they type their questions and they come to you? Do you know?
You know, I think they would need to go into chat and say,
Then does the chat just stay in their breakout room? It doesn't come back out here to us?
I don't know.
Well, I'll just have to trust. If you see or hear something, you're just gonna have to let me know. Not quite sure how I can. This will be an interesting part of the recording.
Can you pause the recording?
I can, but are we recording the breakout rooms?
Surely we can't be recording the breakout rooms because it would be three.
It'd be 4 different recordings. This one plus 3 others. My only fear is if I stop it, I'll forget to turn it back on.
Put a post-it on your computer.
That's a novel idea. All right, well, I'll pause it.
Okay, you know what I can do, Mike? I can assign you to a room.
Yes. One at a time. In Moo, you can physically move me that way with you, or I can go to a different room and then you change me and you just change me as you want.
Very good. It looks like everybody is back. Okay, any observations from anyone about the key factors or TOER? Any questions?
Question, Paul. We kind of left our session with definitely made progress, but there's just a question on timing of the week, kind of this coming week of training and breakout sessions. And what is the expectation for our completion of key factors dropped into Scorebook Navigator? I guess, can you help clarify the activities that, for the rest of the week?
What I'd like you to be, we won't necessarily be using your consolidated, you don't have to have a consolidated set of key factors yet. I would like everyone to have it handy for some of the exercises we're going to do this week and beginning of next week. But don't feel like you have to have it done by Friday or anything. But if somebody does want to take that responsibility and come up with a consolidated set, that would not be wasted time.
So okay. I go by my motto, clear as kind. And so clear as kind, when is the date as examiners reviewing this application, do you want us to have our key factors in Scorebook Navigator? It doesn't have to be within these training dates, but what is the expectation for that?
Mike and Leslie, I'm going to throw that to the two of you.
So as I was talking to our team, having them get me a list, because we had talked about this previously in the way that Scorebook Navigator is set up, right? I am still not sure if everybody went into Scorebook Navigator and dropped in their version of key factors, if there's a way to consolidate it because of it's step 2 instead of step 1. So what my team is going to do is to shoot me all of their key factors, and I'm going to go ahead and consolidate them. And I don't know if I put them in my Scorebook Navigator that then they're available for everybody to use. I can't remember. Gitas was going to look at that as well, but.
Yeah, Leslie, that's kind of where we were. I was thinking is our team's going to collaborate and consolidate, get all of theirs to me, and then I'm going to consolidate. And then I won't necessarily land it in Scorebook Navigator, although I did that with my own. I did it with my own already. I don't know what value that added, but I put it in there. But we're going to have, by the end of the week, let's say, we'll have Team 3's set of consolidated key factors and a tour sheet. but I won't necessarily go unless I hear otherwise from Mike or Paul that we don't go and do anything in Scorebook Navigator with it yet.
So I'm looking at the original workflow that we had developed, and the target date for having consolidated key factors is September 28th. So that's Monday. So everything you've said is on track. What I didn't share with the team is Scorebook Navigator is completely new to me. I've never worked with it before, so I'm having to learn it. And unfortunately, there's no way to learn it unless you're actually living it. It's the way the software is written. We're working on version 2.0 to correct that, but for this year, we have to work with version 1.0. So I've got to confirm, I believe if we put the consolidated ones in there, that's what everybody should be able to see. But the goal will be to get those in there by Monday to make sure they're available to people. So when you start your independent review, everybody's working from the same, each team is working from the same set of consolidated key factors.
Okay, then Mike, we're going to need, I think if each team lead, if we have three sets of team-based consolidated key factors by the end of the week, I think that's a good milestone, but then someone will need to consolidate those three.
Yeah.
So we end up with, all of us end up with one master.
Yeah, so let's plan that because we have a team lead meeting on Monday afternoon scheduled right now. Let's plan to resolve this at that meeting. Let's try and get everything ready in anticipation of that meeting, and then we'll resolve how we're going to take the three and get it to one. And I'm going to figure out between now and then if we can get it into Scorebook Navigator.
Okay, then I think Leslie, Eric, I think that if there's a Pete, Leslie, and Eric version, which will have all of the intel and the homework that's been done by the collective, I think by the end of the week, I think we'll be in good shape, and we'll then, if Leslie and Eric agree with that.
Yeah, I like where it's going. Team 2, I don't think we discussed that. So if in the next couple of days, if you would send me, at least by the end of class on Friday, if you'll send me your key factors, I'll consolidate them, and then I'll marry them up with Pete and Leslie's teams as we move forward.
Guys, I'm going to ask a challenge question here just from a sanity check point again. Today is Wednesday. This was, well, and like I said, I'm probably off a little bit here, but if we're just, again, kind of touching base and going, okay, key factors, we got it, TOR, we got it, we watched the videos, we're learning, getting back into it. I'm happy to work over the weekend to get those all done, but I'm like, to have those in by Friday, that's definitely a big push. So I just want to make sure that's a legitimate deadline and there's no flexibility in it, because this will be hours of work after hours. And again, the weekends is always nice to have. So I don't know if there's any way every individual could get their stuff into the group by the end of the weekend, and then you guys compile next week or not.
I think this is one of those, especially for new examiners, for those who are returning examiners. You guys know the butt kicking number of hours that gets put into one of these projects. The sooner that we can have these key things done, and so for those people who are inclined to go ahead and get work done, keep in mind too that no individual is on their own, right? No individual is just doing key factors. We are all doing key factors, and somebody's going to catch something that somebody else missed, and that's one of the beauty of working as a team. And so what I would say is do the best that you can. And if we can get a really good group of key factors across 30 people by the end of the week, that gives each one of us the weekend to consolidate all of those and then come back together so that we have key factors available for everyone to start independent review next week.
Yeah,
right. So if you haven't gotten through the whole thing, that's fine. Get us what you have the time to do. But what I will tell everyone is take a really good look at the workflow that Mike sent out and understand that this is going to be intense. And carving time out of your calendar every single day, or if you can't get to it today, that you double up tomorrow. Pace yourself, get it in your calendar, make sure you're paying attention and getting especially when you get independent review. We're going to have plenty of time for independent review. You know, I've had to do independent review in a matter of, you know, 3-4 weeks, which is crazy. So we have the time to do it, but really, the sooner that we can get these things done and set everybody else up for success. The key factors is you know, it's a fairly easy exercise to do in terms of you know, just going through and answering the questions and filling out the worksheet, shoot it off to me, Mike, Eric, whoever, and you know, and send what you can by the end of Friday. How's that?
Do we have a call? I'm sorry. Do we have another Zoom call though on the 25th? Don't we have another?
Correct. We have another call coming up on Friday. So if people have questions coming up, there's going to be a second chance for addressing questions. I was going to ask Paul, I wasn't sure how much farther you were going to try and go with key factors in the course of the actual training, or does this conclude what you've got?
We're pretty much finished with talking about key factors, and a couple things I'd like to bring up. Number one, if you're spending 4 or 5 hours on developing key factors, you're spending too much time.
Yeah.
You need to go through, look at the question, and drag that answer over from the application, or just quickly type in a phrase that says, here's what this is about. This is kind of almost a cut and paste exercise to get the nuggets of information into that key factors worksheet. One thing that if you think the team is going to have some challenges, maybe you could split the profile and say, and one of the benefits is you have a pretty good size, all of your teams are good sized. So half the team takes the first half, P.1, half the team takes the second half, P.2, and if you can, go over and above what your assignment is. But that way there's going to be, it won't be half the team doing the first part and stopping. And that's all that you want to get input from all of the areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if there's one thing I've come to appreciate, and I've been an examiner, I didn't even share my own experience at the beginning of this. I've been an examiner 4 times, but only here in Minnesota where, and I've never been a national examiner, and I've never been a team lead. So I'm actually learning from the team leads as we progress through this. But the one thing I've come to appreciate about the whole Baldrige process is the power of the team, right? Not trying to overthink it, worrying that you got to get it perfect yourself. You got a great team surrounding you, and collectively, it always seems to come out right.
Mike is absolutely right there. And as I promise you that when you do your independent review, where you sit by yourself and go through the entire application and look for the strengths and the opportunities for improvement, everybody's input for that, there isn't one person who will have as good a product as the product that comes out of consensus, which is taking all of yours and putting it into one document.
And to be honest, I would rather everybody do the whole profile, just to, you know, especially with the new examiners, it gives you the experience of doing it, right? And part of this is you as an examiner, you're learning the criteria, you're learning the framework, you're learning how it's applied. In this particular application, this is what I told my team, there is very little in this application that is fluff. There is not room for fluff in a national application. And that's what this is. And so every word is precious and every space is precious. And so when you look at this application, if they write something, it's important.
Yeah, the other thing that Leslie talked about is they kind of identify what what's going to go in your table of expected results, and they concisely, you don't have to wade through fluff to get the answer to the question that they have. And so again, please don't spend 15 or 20 hours on putting together the key factors. I would allocate 2 to 3 hours, and if you really put the nose to the grindstone, it would be less than that. Okay, so you're looking for just the facts. You're not having to interpret this like you will when you get into the process categories. Okay? All right. Ready to move on? I'll take that as a yes with the nodding heads. Okay. So we have talked about the organizational profile and the key factors. So you now have this key factors worksheet that is going to be your source of here's what's important to this organization. Now we're going to move into interpreting the application. Now, you read the, or I'm sorry, you viewed the video on how to read the application. And everybody does it in a slightly different way. There is no right way to do it. You can print it off. And please, if you print it off, realize that that is a very, very confidential document and you don't want to leave it sitting around. Please respect the confidentiality of that because there's a lot of confidential information in there. And personally, I have to print it off. That's the way I work with things. So I'm in there with a highlighter and highlighting what I think might be a strength, what might be an opportunity for improvement. You can do that electronically. It's up to you as to what the best way is going to be. But now I'm going to get into some things that are really details that go above and beyond what the video talked about, of things that I want you to be aware of. Now, returning examiners, you know these things. This is a reminder. New examiners, these are going to be kind of the misleading traps that you might see and different ways to interpret things. Tom, would you introduce your daughter to us?
Sorry, this is Cecilia. We have a newborn in the house, and we also have a first grader doing online learning. So I'm kind of helping out while I do this. So
okay, well, Cecilia is going to be growing up in the shadow of excellence. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Cecilia.
The future head of business intelligence, Elevations Credit Union, sitting right there.
Okay. So we finished the OP part. Now we're going to be getting into what you're going to be doing as an independent reviewer before you move into the consensus stage. So just like with the organizational profile, everybody's going to do the assessment using that scorebook and comment matrix where you're identifying strengths and opportunities for improvement for this organization. And then you'll come together in consensus, just like what we're doing here with the key factors of everybody developing key factors and then somebody taking them and putting them into a consolidated consensus key factors worksheet. So we have repetitive steps that you're going to follow now for each process item. And for new examiners, remember, we've got categories of Baldrige, which is category 1, leadership, category 2, strategy, category 3, customers. And within each of those is what are called items. And items are like the 1.1 and 1.2, 2 items in every category. So for each process item, what's on the screen right now is what you're going to do. And I promise you, if you follow this process, it will make it easier.
I don't think we're seeing your screen.
I was just going to say, Paul, your screen's not up.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see how we do that.
Because all we're seeing is your smiling face.
And that's the last thing you want to see. Okay.
Ah, there we go.
Is that better? Okay. So what I just showed was the same slide that we saw earlier, and we're just moving into step 2. So if you follow this process with each item, I promise you, you will do less rework and it will be a more effective review as you do this independent review. The first thing to do is read the criteria. And by that, I mean, open up, when you're starting 1.1, open up 1.1 senior leadership and read through the criteria and read through the notes at the bottom. The notes at the bottom of each of those items is, frankly, the Baldrige criteria is sometimes written in a kind of a Baldrige geek language. And you read it and you think, I'm not quite sure what they're looking for here. When you get into the notes, there are lots of things that will clarify, that will explain, and it's pretty much in layman's language also. So for each step, read the criteria, then you will select the key factors from your team's consensus list that will be developed over the weekend. In the scorebook and comment matrix, there's a place at the top for up to 6 key factors to put in there. So read the criteria, then look at the key factors and say, based on what the criteria is asking for, which key factors should I copy and paste into those key factors as a reminder to me of what's important for the organization for this particular item. Then read the application. And as it talked about in the video, read it however you want to do it, but read it with the criteria next to you and think about, okay, here's 1.1A1, talking about setting vision and values. How do senior leaders set vision and values? And then read the application to be sure that you're looking for the answer to what the question is in the criteria. Start identifying and recording strengths using the comment writing rules that we're going to talk about today. Determine the most appropriate scoring range, select the vital few opportunities for improvement, and then select the exact score. That's a little different than some of you have been used to doing in years before last year, but really you're going to find that in using this process, you're able to determine the scoring range just using the strengths, and then the opportunities for improvement are going to be what keeps them from being in the next highest scoring range. And those scoring ranges, keep in mind, are really a measure of that organization's performance excellence maturity. Okay, so it isn't just a set of scoring guidelines, it's a measure of performance excellence maturity, where they are on that journey. So we're going to start with some things to think about when you read the criteria. And I'm going the wrong way. Okay, there's some red flag words and phrases. Now, with a high-performing organization like you all are looking at, you're going to find fewer and fewer of these. The state program that I was with earlier this week, all 4 of their applicants are first-time applications, and they're nowhere near as mature as what this one is. So we see a lot of these kinds of words in a less mature application. But when you see words like this, you want to dig a little deeper. When they say, we regularly review. Okay, what's regularly? My daily regularly is somebody else's monthly regularly. So we regularly review organizational performance. Well, what does that mean? Those are the kind of things with a less mature organization that talks about things like this. Those are the things that you dig into on site visit. Another word, encourage. Senior leaders encourage employees to come up with new ideas. Okay, but is there a process to make that happen? How do senior leaders actually make that happen? Okay, sometimes we see words like strive. Workers strive to understand patient and stakeholder requirements. Nope, that's not how they do things. That's sort of what they do. And remember, we're looking for the how, which implies a process. Formed, a committee was formed, okay? Tell me what they do. How often do they meet? What are their outcomes of their meetings? Employees are authorized to or given permission doesn't mean the same thing that something's actually going to happen. So when you see words like that, you as I call them, red flag words, it's kind of thing to say, okay, we want to dig deeper into this to understand it, and it may be something that very easily gets put into, for instance, a site visit worksheet. Here's something else you'll see, and these are things you tend to see even in some mature organizations, repeating the criteria questions as statements. Like this first one, senior leaders follow the values of the organization and adhere to the required legal and ethical principles. What they have just done is they have taken the criteria question, made it into a statement and said, we do this. There's nothing there that describes how they do that. And remember, what we do and how we do it is what we're looking for in the process categories. So with that kind of statement, we have no idea of what kind of system or process is in place for it. Now, here's the sort of thing that we would be looking for is a more appropriate response would identify the actions they take for communicating legal and ethical expectations. So be careful of those when they're just repeating back what the criteria are. So we don't even pay attention to those. You know, you can mark it out with a red pencil if you want to. You'll also see in some things where the applicant kind of gives you a mini lecture. We passionately believe patient satisfaction is critical to our success, or leaders must communicate effectively. You can almost see them raising their hands. Doesn't mean there's a systematic, fact-based process. For example, we'd like to see things like, first, we group the patients or stakeholders into 3 segments based on service line. Then we conducted focus groups within each segment to determine the priorities and preferences of each group for services and cost. Then we, so on and so forth. Now, even though that isn't in a process diagram, even though it doesn't say step 1, step 2, step 3, you could easily go into that and say, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, and you've got evidence there of, at minimum, the beginning of a process to address the criteria. Also, when organizations write that they plan to do something, okay, intentions aren't worth anything with the exception of course, is the strategic planning, but we plan to do this is something that you would essentially X out. Okay, let's talk about and reinforce what I talked about, or what was in the video about what you're looking for when you read the application. We call this ADLI, ADLI. That will be ingrained into you. If Mike doesn't know this, but after 4 site visits, you get a little tattoo that says ADLI on your left arm. And that's approach, deployment, learning, and integration. This is probably some of the most important one of the most important things you will learn as an examiner. And frankly, it's one of the most important things you can bring back to your own organization to say, okay, we talk about processes, we talk about approaches, but do we actually deploy those approaches appropriately? Do we have evaluation and improvement cycles in place, which is what learning is about? And integration, are we working just in silos, or are we working across the organization to get the greatest benefit of working together to improve results? So let's go through those one by one. Approach is really the process. It's the steps or methods by which they accomplish a response to the criteria. And we look for 2 things. Is it systematic and is it effective? So when they go through that process, like we talked about 2 slides ago, where we could say, Well, that's step 1, step 2, step 3. That's evidence of being systematic, well-ordered, repeatable, and exhibiting the use of reliable data and information so learning is possible. Okay, it's a little bit of Baldrige geek there, but is there a feedback loop? Do they use data and information about that process to evaluate and improve their performance with that? Are they an organization, you know, with the learning component there, are they an organization that is continuously improving, and that's their culture? So systematic is, if I do it one way this month, am I confident that it will be done the same way next month, and the following month, and the following month? Effective means it's analyzed with the organization's needs. Where might you know what the organization's needs are? Probably in your key factors, okay? So the organization's needs, what's important to them, strategic challenges, things like that. And is there an outcome measure in place to be able to say, is it effective? Is it improving a result? Okay, some not so good examples. Senior leaders create an environment for success by focusing on a positive, innovative culture and by promoting mission, vision, values every day. Okay, we got nothing there. That's about how do senior leaders create an environment for success. Well, we don't know anything that they do other than promoting mission, vision, values every day, and we have no idea how they're doing that promotion. In item 3.2, customer engagement, we build and manage customer relationships through constant community outreach initiatives that help bolster our mission statement. Still, that doesn't give us any idea of really what they're doing and how they're doing it. Item 5.1, the applicant organizes and manages their workforce by capitalizing on core competencies and reinforcing a focus on residents and families. It sounds really good, doesn't it? I will tell you, 1997 was the first year that I did an assessment, and it was through the Minnesota Council for Quality. And I got my application and I started going through it, and I thought, they've given me a perfect organization to look at. Well, after spending time with my team leader, I certainly found out that there was a way to find opportunities for improvement, and that application was full of things like this that sounded really nice, but really didn't give us any sort of knowledge of what their processes were. I will tell you also that the team leaders that you have lots and lots of experience in this. And if you question something, I would encourage you to get in touch with them if you have any questions on that. Okay, now here's a pretty good example. The leadership team ensures overall sustainability through the continuous improvement processes listed in the profile. Okay, connecting back to the profile. Our continuous improvement initiatives, systems, and processes have been instrumental in sustaining our competitive position. For example, in early 2019, a PII team project was chartered, led by 2 members of the leadership team, leadership involvement there, with the purpose of evaluating the approach to managing innovation and benchmarking Baldrige recipients. An example of learning there. This effort has a target date of 3rd quarter 2020 to report findings and recommended actions. So a little bit more there of what they're actually doing to ensure success. You know, team projects, leadership team involvement, things like that. Here's another example, and I'm not going to read through all of these. Again, these are resources for you to go back to if you have questions on this. Another one in 6.1 about work processes. So approach is really, what are we doing? What are the processes? Tell me what we're doing. Deployment is the extent to which they consistently apply the defined approach to relevant parts of the organization. Are all relevant areas considered? Now, let me give you an example of this. Let's say you were looking at a healthcare applicant, a 24-hour organization, and in their approach, they said one of our key methods of communicating with our workforce is through all hands meetings every month. Okay, so we have an all hands meeting for, well, let's think about deployment for all employees, and they do it monthly. That sounds like they're deploying it pretty well. But then you start thinking, well, wait a minute. For a 24-hour organization, what about the people on the evening shift and the night shift? You know, is it deployed to them? So that's one of the reasons that deployment is usually best tested on a site visit. So approach and learning is where most of your comments will come from. What you'll find with this organization is that they do a pretty good job of describing what deployment is, but recognize that that's one of the things that you will be testing on site is if they say this is something that we do with all of our employees, you want to be sure that that is actually done with all employees. So, you know, the note at the bottom in your individual assessment, look for explicit evidence before writing a deployment OFI. And by that, I mean that, you know, they would need to say, you know, we do our all hands meeting at 1 o'clock on the last Friday of the month. And that would, you could then say, well, they don't do it for these other shifts. But typically, deployment is something that you kind of put off to the side to say, okay, we want to check that when we're on the site visit. Okay, so approach, what we do and how we do it. Deployment, is it done the way it should be done? Is it addressing everyone that needs to be addressed? The third component is learning. And I want you to remember this formula at the top, because this is what we want you to remember about what learning means. Personally, I just wish they'd call it evaluation and improvement, but learning is evaluation plus improvement plus, and I put this in parentheses because it's at the higher levels of the scoring ranges, plus innovation. So has the approach, the process has been refined through fact-based cycles of evaluation and improvement? Are they evaluating and are they improving? You will see in the scoring guidelines that there are certain levels of maturity where they ask, well, are they just evaluating or is this just a random improvement? Because think about, have you ever worked in one of your previous jobs for an organization where they evaluated, but they didn't improve? I used to work for an organization that I can remember getting the results of the employee engagement survey. This organization was so proud that they surveyed 27,000 employees at global locations all around the world. But I can remember sitting with the senior team and we got these results and everybody looked at the results for where they were and they kind of looked at their peers next to see, did I do better than Joe next to me? And we really didn't do anything with the results. It was like a backwards look to say, how did we do, rather than how did we do and what do we need to improve? So you're looking for evaluation plus improvement. Sometimes you'll also see, you know, have you ever had the CEO go to a conference and come back and say, okay, we're going to start doing something that I learned about. And it's really not one of the priorities. It's kind of that bright, shiny object of improvement. So what we're looking for is, does this organization have a good method of evaluation and improvement, and with your applicant innovation of meaningful change or even breakthrough change. Okay, so this can be any kind of organizational learning, R&D, evaluation and improvement, idea programs, sharing of best practices, benchmarking with other organizations, the results of surveys, and what you do with those customer and employee surveys.
Paul, can I ask a question?
Of course.
What about those organizations that are research heavy? How does this play into those organizations that are research heavy?
Okay. Many times, we're going to talk later about something called the item under review. Okay, so when we talk about evaluation and improvement, we're looking for evidence of that in every item. Okay, so in 1.1, senior leadership, we're looking for evidence of improvement in the processes of senior leadership. When we're looking at 2.1, strategy and strategy development, we're looking for what are they doing to improve the processes that they use in strategic planning. If it's an organization that is heavy into research and development, that's one of their key work processes, that's going to be in 6.1, what are we doing to evaluate and improve our key work processes? So think about, we have a lot of medical device companies in Minneapolis where I live. Lots and lots of research development. So if they were to say, what are our key work processes, they would probably be able to say research and development, marketing or sales and marketing, and probably several other things. So when they're heavy on research and development, for learning with that, we're wanting to see something in category 6 that says, how do we improve our research and development process? What we're really looking for is, do they have a process to improve their process? Does that make sense, Eric?
It does. I've thought about it over the last couple of years as I've been more involved in working in healthcare. There are a lot that would say, yeah, I've got innovation every day. So just a question of curiosity.
Yeah. It really with this L component, it's just being sure that in all of the items, you have learning for what we call the item under review. So sometimes we see a challenge where an organization in 3.2 says, and I'm going to bring up a healthcare example here. We found that through our customer satisfaction survey, we found that our patients were dissatisfied with our food, so we implemented a menu-driven food service program. Okay, that is not evaluation and improvement of 3.2, which is how do you measure customer engagement. It's actually evaluation and then improving a key work process in 6.1, which is the dietary system. Now, in 3.2, if it was improving the item under review, it would be, we listened through various listening posts to our patients and their families, and they complained about food. So we added a question to our our patient survey about the quality of the food. Okay, so that's improving the process that you're talking about in that item.
Yeah.
Now, if they have things like that identified in the wrong place, it doesn't mean you ignore it. It just means you give them credit for that improvement in the appropriate item. Make sense?
Totally.
Okay, I will tell you, that is it took me a couple years to get that item under review into this thick head. So team leaders, keep that in mind, item under review. And we'll talk about that a little later too. Okay, the fourth component of what you look for in an application is integration. The extent to which the described approach is linked to or aligned with other approaches and criteria throughout the application. Okay, this is some examples of this would be things like in 2.1, which is about the strategy development process. Do they bring in the strategic challenges and advantages from the organizational profile into the strategic planning process, or are those completely separated? Also in 4.1, it talks about organizational performance review. And one of the things it asks is, what are your key performance measures? And if those key performance measures don't align with what the strategic objectives are, that's evidence of a lack of integration. So that's what we're looking for, is those connections across the organization. And my guess is that you're going to see a lot of integration in this application. Okay, so approach, deployment, learning, and integration are those components that you're going to be looking for. What I do when I go through my hard copy of an application, I put all kinds of notes in the margin. So if there's an approach described, and you know, an approach might be a nicely drawn process diagram, or it may just be a rambling paragraph that I can put 1, 2, 3, 4 on. I put an A in the margin. If it talks about deployment, I put a D there. If there's an example of evaluation and improvement, or either component of that, I'll put an L in the margin. You will not be returning these applications to the applicant, so you ought to do everything you can to know as much as you need, and you can scribble all over it, you can highlight it. The other thing I do is, as opposed to filling out the TOER table of expected results as I go through it, I just put an R in the margin. Then as I go back through again in more detail, that's when I grab those things that I labeled as R and I put them in the appropriate place in the table of expected results. So it's not just looking for, does this sound good? You're really looking for all 4 of those components. Another thing I'll emphasize that I mentioned earlier is you've already read the criteria of what we're looking for, but when you read the application, read the question that they're answering and then read the response, and be sure that they truly have answered that. And for an area to address like 1.1A1, be sure they've addressed all of the questions in that particular area. Okay, we're going to get into process comment writing now. And comment writing is one of the most, I think, frustrating things for people, because they say, why do we have to spend all this time on making sure comments are perfect? Process comment writing helps ensure that you're going to have a feedback report that the comments are understandable and they're actionable by the applicant. And there are certain components to it that will make it easier if you follow the model that we're going to show you, which is called the NERD comment writing model. So we're going to get into that now. And the first thing I want to do is talk about approach requirements. Now, we just finished talking about approach, deployment, learning, and integration, and I'm going to go back to approaches. This is the senior leadership item. And remember, item is like 1.1, and then 1.1A1 is called an area to address. But we have levels of maturity here. And the first is what we call the basic approach requirement. And that is for senior leadership, essentially they're asking, how do senior leaders lead the organization? Okay, a really general question. And some of us joke about the fact that, well, you can respond to this by saying, our leaders breathe and they're barking out orders. Well, that's how they lead the organization. But as we move forward in the criteria, we get to much more maturity of what high-performing organizations' senior leaders look like. So the next level is overall. So how do senior leaders set your organization's vision and values? How do senior leaders' personal actions demonstrate their commitment to legal and ethical behavior? So the questions that are in bold within the comment or the criteria area are what are called the overall questions. So these 5 things here, the overall questions, are really what the Baldrige criteria is saying. Here's what senior leaders do in their senior leader role: set vision and values, demonstrate commitment to legal and ethical behavior, communicate with those groups, create an environment for success, and create a focus on action. And if you look at those, those pretty much are what a senior leader's leadership role is, as opposed to their functional role. And then finally, you have the multiple requirements, the multiple questions. And those are going into much more detail for those organizations that are much more mature in their performance excellence journey. So basic, overall, and multiple, and those are all about the approaches, how they do these things. So when you write comments, we want you to put, when you give credit in a comment for an approach, we want you to put an A in parentheses after that with, does it address a basic, an overall, or a multiple requirement? That helps your team know what you're looking for when you move into consensus. It helps the judges when they're making decisions, and it helps ensure that comment score alignment that I talked about earlier. Okay, so what are comments? Comments are the main outcome of an evaluation. Your comments are what's going to go to the applicant. They are not going to get a table of expected results. They're not going to get your key factors. They're going to get a set of comments that tell them what their strengths are and what their opportunities for improvement are. And we might as well start calling them this now. Opportunities for improvement are called OFIs, and it's not doing what the criteria require. Strengths are doing what the criteria require. Okay, that sounds pretty simple. It's kind of like, well, all I have to do is compare the criteria to the application, and if they don't answer something, that's an OFI. Well, for this application, you're going to be seeing a lot more need to be a level of maturity in going through to find those opportunities for improvement. Strengths are pretty easy to find. They tell you what their strengths are. And you see approach, deployment, learning, and integration. Those are the strengths. It's harder to find the opportunities for improvement, but I always say the best way to find OFIs is using your key factors worksheet. And the nice thing about that is it customizes the OFIs to what's important to the applicant. So let's talk about 4 opportunities for improvement. Missing information. Yeah, if they just don't have the required process, that's an OFI. And in italics here, we don't critique the writing of the application. So if they have a poorly written process, but you can read it and kind of say, okay, yeah, I can put 1, 2, 3, 4 steps on that. We give them credit for a systematic process. So we don't critique the writing of the application. Every once in a while, I see these feedback reports that someone said, you know, a poorly written description of what is supposed to be a process. Okay, we don't need to know that. What we're trying to do is be as encouraging as we possibly can in helping them understand what the next level of, what the next things are that they should do on their performance excellence journey. Lack of a systematic process based on incomplete or anecdotal information. If you will not see it in this application, but my guess is that our experienced examiners have seen some in the past where, gosh, they just kind of described anecdotal information of something that happened once, and they're expecting us to see that as a systematic process. No. So elements of the application don't meet the criteria or things in the scoring requirements, like fact-based evaluation and improvement cycles. Maybe they talk about one little improvement they made, but they don't talk about what the process was to determine what that improvement was going to be. And like I talked about earlier, not addressing a key factor. Excuse me. Now, when you're doing your independent review, that's when you're doing this on your own, not as a team, you can use bulleted comments instead of full, what we call feedback ready comments that I'm going to explain later. But please don't use bulleted comments that are too cryptic to understand. So for instance, when you're looking at 2.1 strategy development, don't give a strength for strategic plan process. Okay, that really doesn't tell anything. Give us a nugget that says, what's the main theme or concept of what that strength is? The organization has a 5-step strategic planning process that was evaluated and improved in 2019. There's your bulleted comment. They don't meet all the writing rules that we're going to talk about, but other examiners can understand what your strength or your OFI is about without having to go to the application. So enough that somebody else can understand what that strength is, not just what you're referring to. They have a strategic planning process, but what is the strength of it, or what is the opportunity for improvement? Now, feedback ready comments can be used instead of bulleted comments during the independent review stage, but after independent review, when you move into consensus, you do have to develop feedback ready comments. And those provide complete detail to be sure that the ultimate customer of this, the applicant who's getting the feedback report, will fully understand the message without having to go back to the criteria or to their application. And those feedback ready comments meet all the comment writing requirements, including relevance, correct grammar, complete thoughts. You're going to have a full list of what the comment writing rules are after today. Some samples. A good bulleted strength. 1.1b. Senior leaders communicate with the workforce and customers using many techniques. See figure 1.1-2. And that's an approach dash overall comment, because it's addressing one of the bold levels of comments, okay? The overall levels. If, okay, an OFI for the same one would be communication techniques, figure 1.1-2, not used consistently by senior leaders to communicate with the workforce. Okay, again, approach overall, but you can see there's enough detail there to understand it. It doesn't just say senior leaders communicate, figure 1.1-2. It gives enough detail to be kind of the nugget that everybody would understand, examiners would understand. Now look at the difference between a bulleted comment and a feedback-ready comment. For that 1.1b, senior leaders communicate effectively with the workforce through several methods such as all staff meetings, daily rounds, postings, rounding for outcomes, and talking directly with staff during scheduled and unscheduled daily interactions, figure 1.1-2. Or the OFI that says it doesn't appear they consistently use communication techniques to communicate effectively with the workforce. And then what we call a so what or a relevant statement that says, here's why this is important. It may make it difficult to motivate workers to contribute their utmost, so on and so forth. So we're going to be talking about so what's in just a little while. So again, for comment score alignment, strength comments identify the processes they're using to meet the criteria and scoring requirements. Strengths altogether need to support the score that you as examiners will provide. And one difference with from the Baldrige method, Baldrige at the national level suggests you should have about 6 comments total for an item. It may be 3 strengths, 3 OFIs, 2 strengths, 4 OFIs, whatever combination. What we want to do is, if they have a strength in every area, then we give a comment for every area to address with the strength. And the OFIs, the opportunity for improvement comments, define what the applicant is not doing that the criteria require, and we want it to be at an appropriate level that says that this opportunity for improvement is keeping you from being in a higher scoring range. And remember, think of that scoring range as being in a higher performance, excellence, maturity level. Okay, so we don't want an OFI for every area to address. We want the OFIs to be the things that are the highest priority for the applicant to address in moving forward. Okay, we're going to talk now about when to use those ADLI references. Putting the ADLI references in the comments, like I briefly showed you earlier, is something that will help in the consensus process, it will help in the judging process, and I promise you it will help in the scoring process. So for better comment score alignment and more accurate scores, when you have an approach, you're going to put this is an A-B, A-O, or A-M for approach at the basic level, approach overall, or approach multiple. So remember back, basic is in the title, overall is the bold comments, and multiple is the non-bolded criteria. So we want you to actually include that in the comments that you write. So here's what it looks like. I'm not going to read through these, but you can see that the first sentence of the 2.183 comment on the top addresses approach multiple. So it's the things that it's addressing are things that were in the question in 2.183 in the non-bolded text. So a high level of maturity. And there's an example in here of an evaluation they use to identify blind spots or flaws in assumptions. So approach multiple and learning. A recent example is the addition of a regulatory requirement scan based on those. And so we put an L there also to show evidence of learning. So an evaluation and an improvement. And you can see all the way through the second one of a lot of examples of approach multiple learning, even some deployment in here. Now, one thing that examiners do every once in a while is, for instance, on the second one, where we have A, we have D, we have L, we have I. They'll just put at the very end in parentheses, ADLI, to say this comment hit everything. But that doesn't allow us to go back for judges to look at it and understand, okay, yeah, that is a good example of learning. So we ask you to embed those references within the comment, not just grouping at the end of the comment. So again, another example. This is in an opportunity for improvement at the multiple level. And this is the kind of comments that we're expecting to see, comments of this kind of length. Because again, you're looking at a very mature applicant, and this is the kind of comment that they would be expecting from all of you, and it's the kind of comment that they would be that they will have received from Baldrige. So the references are in both strengths and OFIs. So it's harder to identify opportunities for improvement because they're not telling us what those are. Everything that they write is saying, gosh, we're good at this. Listen to our process for this. But realize there are different kinds of OFIs. Approach OFIs, if they've got lots of processes described, you may find that it's tough finding approach OFIs, but you may be able to find some with the deployment and especially with learning up and down through the organization. We'll talk about the scoring guidelines later, but as an organization matures in those scoring guidelines, learning moves from being, basically being firefighters to, for every area to address, they have a short example of the kinds of evaluation and improvement that they've done for that particular process. I think what you'll find with the applicant that all of you are looking at is they certainly have a culture of continuous improvement, and it will probably be evidenced by lots of examples of how they've improved processes and an overall process that talks about evaluation and improvement as part of their culture. Now, we prefer to have what we call 1 or 2 blocking OFIs. So if you have, let's say, 3 opportunities for improvement in a particular item, what we like to do is be able to say, out of these 3 opportunities for improvement, this is the opportunity for improvement that kept us from scoring you in a higher scoring range. And essentially what that's saying is, this is the opportunity for improvement that is keeping you from a higher level of performance excellence maturity. The most important comment that you as an examiner team believe is constraining them from the next level of performance. So when you bold that OFI, that's going to become, as we use here, a pointer that says, okay, senior leader team, as you're reviewing this, based on the use of the Baldrige criteria, we believe this is the most important OFI in this area, the most important 1 or 2 for you to focus on in your continuous improvement journey. Now, you're not going to run into this challenge too much with this applicant, but if this was an immature application and your strengths were down here in the 0 to 5 to the 20% in the scoring range, you would not be identifying an OFI that's clear up here in the multiple requirements. So for instance, if the organization does not have a systematic strategic planning process or a strategic planning process overall, you're not going to go into the great multiple questions to find all these nits about an effective strategic planning process. Your OFI is going to be the organization does not have a strategic planning process. And then that's going to be your blocking OFI. And you may have, you know, some things on the overall level to say, and this is another less important OFI for you to address. So we want to be addressing strengths and opportunities for improvement at the level of maturity that the organization is at. So for instance, with the applicant that you're looking at, you're not going to have a big strength that says the organization has a strategic planning process. You're probably going to be giving them, you know, that strength, but there's going to be a lot more evidence there that says that they have a very mature strategic planning process. Okay, so again, strength comments support what the score is, and opportunities for improvement tell why they aren't in the next scoring range. Make sense? Good, I like to see those head nods. Okay, in your quick reference guide, which is available in the resources, is a set of comment writing rules. And the comment writing rules, if you print off that quick reference guide and do it double-sided, and then you staple it, the back cover on the outside will be the comment writing rules. And they are there for a very particular reason, is as you are writing your comments and you're sitting at your computer, I want you to have that quick reference guide. If the application and the criteria are on your left side, I want you to have the quick reference guide on your right side. And as you write the comments, I want you to have that quick reference guide laid upside down, so on the back cover, you see the comment writing rules. Check them as you start writing comments to see if you're violating any of the comment writing rules. So we've summarized them into one page on that quick reference guide. And it's important for you to have them there. New examiners, as you're writing your comments, really do check those comment writing rules. Those of you who are experienced, you know most of these, but every once in a while it's good to just double check yourself. So every overall requirement for an item, so there are 5 overall requirements in 1.1 senior leadership. Each of those needs to have a strength or an opportunity for improvement. With your organization, you may have 5 strengths, and then probably a couple OFIs, but we want you to take a position on every area to address. And so what I'm getting to is you may have strengths for every one of them, and then the OFI is a level of maturity in, for instance, the multiple requirements that you'd be looking at. And we're going to talk more about the structure of a comment, but it can include words from the application. It can include words from criteria requirements, from the scoring guidelines. It can incorporate things from key factors to really customize that comment so that the applicant knows that you're keeping what's important to them in mind as you write your feedback report. Okay, the format that we want you to use in writing comments, and when the Baldrige program rolled this out, I thought this is brilliant because everybody will remember the acronym NERD. Okay, I think some people complained and said, what, are you calling us as Baldrige examiners nerds or what? So they don't use this anymore, but they still use the same information. I like using NERD because when I write a comment, I know exactly the format I need to use. First of all, a typical comment is 2 to 4 sentences in length. And it may be relatively long, But I will tell you, I have seen in another state, I saw a feedback report, this was quite a few years ago, where the 1.1A1 comment just pulled all kinds of things in from the application, and that comment was 3/4 of a page long. That's not what the applicant wants to see. We want a concise statement that is easy to read, 2 to 4 sentences in length. NERD stands for, first of all, the nugget. And this is the thing that is probably, if you're doing bulleted comments, your nugget is probably your bulleted comment from that stage. It's a clear statement of the strength or the opportunity for improvement, usually including a key phrase from the criteria. So you write your nugget. Here's, right between the eyes, here's what we want to tell you is a strength, or here's what we want to tell you is an opportunity for improvement. Then the E in NERD stands for evidence. With a strength, it's an example from the application. It doesn't have to be everything that they gave you, but some examples from the application of why you believe that's a strength. With the OFI, it's typically explaining what the gap is that they are missing that you expected to find in the application. Now, for relevance, optionally, you can put a relevance statement at the end of a strength comment. That's optional, but that would be something that would say, because of this, essentially, this effective strategic planning process will help the organization address its strategic challenges and advantages. That's optional to put that. The strength is with the nugget and the example, that's actually sufficient. But with the opportunity for improvement, we require that that comment end with a so what. And this is a great place to connect to a key factor. To bring in one of the strategic challenges and to say, if the organization does not address this key factor, they may not make the progress that they would want to against their particular strategic challenge. And then the D is for done, stop. Sometimes examiners just get to typing and all of a sudden they've got this long comment. At the end of writing that comment, look at it and think, okay, if I were the applicant, if I were the administrator, if I were the CEO, whoever that senior leader is, would I understand what this strength is? Would I understand what the OFI is? Have I used Baldridge's language, or have I used the language of the applicant? Just put yourself in that person's seat and say, would I know what action I need to take? So we want it to be understandable and we want it to be actionable. Okay, so that NERD comment format is also in your quick reference guide. So please use that. For me, it really helps to think, okay, my nugget, my evidence, my relevance, okay, I'm done and I'm ready to move on. So remember at the beginning, I showed you this logo at the top right with the reference book. I'm going to quickly go through these comment writing rules. This is the example of where there is lots and lots and lots of text, and that's for your reference to go back to, not for us to go through here. So the index in the quick reference guide will point you right to these comment writing rules, which, of course, as I said earlier, is summarized on the back of the quick reference guide. So I'm going to hit the very top of these. Strength comments reflect any and all of their processes that meet the criteria. And I'm going to say this over and over during our training. Strengths support what the score is. So any strength that they have, we want to incorporate. Now, one thing that we don't want to do is have 3 separate let's say 1.1A1 strength comments. We just consolidate everything into one strength comment. So no more than one strength comment per area to address, like 1.1A1. Strength comments contain enough detail so they understand the main reasons why you determined it's a strength. That's why I want you at the end of each comment to say, will they understand what I'm trying to say here? And using that nerd format with that concise nugget up front is really going to help with that. Okay, here's an example of one of those strengths. The applicant has put into place an effective, systematic 5-step strategic planning process that includes a gap analysis, an environmental scan, the identification of strategic challenges and advantages it faces, and the development of an outcome-based strategic objectives. Okay, what they've got there is the nugget up front, and they've included the evidence in the same sentence. 2 years ago, in response to a feedback report, the applicant began conducting annual evaluations and used this information to verify and or improve the accuracy of its planning assumptions. So they have also integrated into there a learning, evidence of learning. So that is a rock solid comment there that addresses NERD and addresses the approach, deployment, learning, and integration. Okay, opportunities for improvement. OFI comments reflect criteria requirements that the organization doesn't meet. And of all the possible OFIs they could have, again, we want you to focus on the vital few or key that keep them from scoring at the top of the range or keeps them from the next higher scoring range. So if you came up with a score of 55 in the scoring range of 50 to 65, we want to understand why you weren't able to score them at 60 or 65, or why the other comments might explain why they are not in the 70 to 85 scoring range. Okay, they're relevant and actionable. They should be able to understand the potential adverse consequences it could face because it doesn't do what the criteria require. Let me ask you on this. We want to be sure it addresses the potential adverse consequences. Sometimes I see comments that say, if you address this, then all kinds of rosy things will happen for the organization. We kind of take a stand on this that we want them to know what the potential negative consequences are, not the positive consequences are. Because the negative consequences are actually the more immediate threat if they're not doing it right now. OFI comments are non-prescriptive and based on criteria requirements. Do not offer your opinion. If you see in your comment that it says the applicant should or could in an OFI comment, you have probably crossed the line from being an examiner to being a consultant, and you are not a consultant, okay? So do not include something that says the organization's senior leaders should give everyone their cell phone number so they can contact them if they have a great idea. Okay, you do not do that. You're looking just at what criteria requirements are. And they focus on process or system deficiencies, not on poor writing. We don't critique the applicant's writing. And here's one of the key reasons for that. Typically, it's not the CEO, it's not the hospital administrator, it's not the school principal or superintendent that writes the application. And when they get an application that some of the comments say, the application did not clearly describe how the organization's strategic objectives address its strategic challenges. At that point, that senior leader says, we didn't describe it well. If only Jane, who wrote the application, had written a better application, I'd be accepting this award from Mike Gratz. Okay, so we want to focus on the system deficiencies, not on the writing. Rules for all comments. Comments don't contradict other comments in the same item or other items. This is something that you'll probably want to work through in consensus, because lots of times somebody may address something as a strength, somebody else sees it as an opportunity for improvement, and during the consensus process is when you work out all those conflicts. As I said earlier, comments don't provide more than one strength and/or OFI per area to address, like 1.1A2. Should be one clear, concise comment for an area to address. And I'm going to emphasize here for the new examiners, you may have a strength and an opportunity for improvement for the same area to address. Comments are accurate in reflecting all the information provided by the applicant. You want to double check facts and data, figure references, do that final check before that feedback report is submitted, because there's nothing worse than sending a feedback report to the applicant that has mistakes in it. Try to use the applicant's terminology and avoid the use of acronyms or Baldrige geek language. When we say avoid the use of acronyms, you really want to even avoid the use of the applicant's acronyms. And here's why. If you've ever written an application, you know that if your organization's name is a long name, or a certain process has a long name, you shorten that up to get some of that valuable real estate to be able to fit everything into those 50 precious pages. Just because you've shortened that doesn't mean that your CEO or your administrator or your superintendent knows what that shortened acronym is. So don't use acronyms. And if you do use acronyms, at least spell out what it is the first time it's used in the feedback. Comments stand alone and are complete. You don't want to have comments that say, let's look at this example here, 1.1b. The information in figure 1.1-2 shows that senior leaders use many methods to communicate with the workforce, including the ERP. Okay, at that point, whoever is reading that feedback report has to go back to the application and look up figure 1.1-2. You saw in an earlier comment on an earlier slide that you can pull some of the key communication methods out and then reference figure 1.1-2 in parentheses. So you want it to stand alone so nobody has to go elsewhere to figure out what that comment means. Comments are grammatically correct, and one word that's used a lot in feedback reports is data. And some people get more wrapped around the spindle with this than others, but you never use a sentence that said data is available, data are available, data's plural. Comments are consistent with SCORE and scoring guidelines and are identified using correct item references. We want what's called comment score alignment. So when they read those comments, those who are highly experienced in using the Baldrige criteria will read those comments and they'll see their score and they'll say, yep, that makes sense. That's what we call comment score alignment. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time on Friday talking about how to do that. Also, based on requirements in the Baldrige scoring guidelines and the way those are phrased, we use a system at the bottom that says that any process item scoring 30% or higher must have a comment that addresses learning as a strength or an OFI or both. And any process scoring 50% or higher must have a comment that addresses learning as a strength. Okay, so 30%, in the 30 to 45%, it must have a comment that says either that there is the evidence of the beginning of a process to evaluate and improve, or an opportunity for improvement that says there is no evidence. If it's 50% or higher, it must have a comment that says there is evidence of some kind of learning occurring. Don't bury a strength in an OFI. And in the example here, this is the best way to explain this. Here's an opportunity for improvement. Although an effective system is in place to develop action plans to achieve strategic objectives, okay, what does that sound like? That sounds like a strength. So if this is the only comment for 2.2A2 is an OFI that starts with a strength, you violated this comment writing rule. However, if as a strength in 2.2A2, it talks about there is an effective system in place to develop action plans, then you have this comment down below that references that strength, but then says, but here's a challenge with deployment. Okay, so anytime you see an opportunity for improvement that starts with although or has a kind of a backhanded strength, you've got to be sure that there's a related strength up above. Comments are detailed but concise but not cryptic. If you follow that NERD acronym and that 2 to 4 sentence guideline, you'll be writing nice, effective, concise comments. So, final step in comment writing, you are you set your whole feedback report aside. At the end of independent review, and for the team at the end of consensus review, set it aside, read it again from the perspective of the ultimate customer, the senior leaders of the applicant organizations, to be sure it's understandable and that it's actionable. Put yourself in the chair of whoever that leader is and ask yourself, would I understand this comment if I were in this role? And is it actionable that I would know what I need to do to move forward? So, summary of comment writing rules. This is what's on the back of your quick reference guide and is going to be a valuable resource for you as you write your comments. And I encourage you to have it there as you write them, not just when you're finished with them. The other thing is writing effective comments in a concise way with a good message up front. I promise you that if you take this seriously, when you get out of this process, you're going to find that when you put together an email, when you put together a tweet, you're going to find your writing, your business writing becomes more effective. Just one of those added values of being an examiner. So remember the NERD comment format. Again, it's in your quick reference guide, and just memorize NERD and what it stands for. And as you write your comments, you'll find that they magically come out more effective than what you thought you'd be able to do. And it's not as confusing as you thought it was going to be. Reminder of that 30% and 50% with learning comments. And reminder, don't critique the writing. You know, on the left side here, little information is provided on how Collin Technologies' strategic planning process takes into consideration risks associated with the strategic challenge. So you said you did a lousy job of writing. Then into the so what, the relevance, without a clear description of how Collin considers its market growth challenges, it is difficult to assess. We call that an examiner-centric comment. It's saying, wah, 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 you're making my job hard because I can't assess this. Okay, you will have a really nice application to be reviewing. Sometime in the future, when you're an examiner again, you might have a less mature, and you'll think, could they have written a better application? It would make my job easier. Okay, you can think that, but you don't put it in your writing. And on the right-hand side is the same comment done in an effective way. It's not evident that the process takes into consideration the risks associated with the strategic challenge of growth. Process deficiency tied to a key factor of a strategic challenge of growth. Without addressing the market growth challenge, their key factor, its strategy to expand and achieve market leadership may not be successful. Nice comment, 2 sentences long, lots of information in there. They know what they need to do. Okay. This is where we're going to be on Friday afternoon, is starting on how to score process items. What time have we got?
So can I add a couple of quick comments?
Absolutely.
So I've had a couple of folks contact me through the chat regarding the quick reference guide. All of these resources, you should have gotten them via email, but we're also posting them all on the website. So if you go to the RMPEx website and you look under examiner resources and under the examiner page, and then there should be a link for examiner resources. You should find links to all of these presentations and to the various resources Paul has talked about or that have been sent to you in the past. You should be able to find them all there. There are 2 exceptions, 2 things you will not find on that page. The first one, of course, is the application itself, because we can't make that public, and anything on our website is public. So the only place the application exists is in Scorebook Navigator. And the second one is the criteria itself, because again, we cannot make that public available to the public. So that is not on the examiner resource page. That is embedded in Scorebook Navigator. If somebody wants a printed copy of the criteria, please email me and send me an address to mail it to. We have copies that we have to buy those copies, but we'll make a printed copy available to you, but you got to email me an address because I have nobody's address for sending it. So you should be able to find those resources. There you go. Pete's already posted the link. So you should be able to find them there. You might find some stuff from the past. Sally and I are working to get some of the older stuff out of there, and we're actually working on that again tomorrow. So hopefully it's nice and clean and just shows you the stuff that we've been sharing with you over the last few weeks.
Let me throw one other thing in, Mike. And I cannot remember if I addressed this up front. I hope I did, but if I didn't, shame on me. This presentation will be made available to you. So I hope nobody was taking notes and trying to write down everything in the presentation.
Yeah, you did say that, and I meant to mention that I've already communicated with Sally, and this presentation, Paul's going to get it to me as a PDF, and it will be linked on that resource page by sometime tomorrow.
No, it will be there when training is over.
Oh, when training is over?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The videos are all linked there, and the other documents are all linked there. So you should find it on that examiner resource page.
Okay, I hope this virtual training, I will tell you just my personality, I would much rather be with all of you in a room doing this. But due to COVID, but also I am pleased to have people from, I think we have people from every state that you serve on this. And it's nice to be able to have you have the flexibility to be at home. And that works out pretty nicely. I hope this worked out well. If you have any suggestions, you all have my email from what I sent out today with the TOER. Shoot me an email if you have any suggestions for how this could be more effective. Otherwise, we'll plan on seeing each other at 1 o'clock Mountain Time on Friday. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Team leads, are we going to stay on for a
Thank
few
you.
minutes to debrief? Team
Yep.
leads, just hang on here for a second.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. I think we lost Pete.
Did you just want the leaders to stay on? I missed that part.
Yep, just the team leads. Thanks.
Otherwise, I'm just sitting here going, what am I?
Unless you'd like to become one.
I will. I would love to at some point. That's wonderful. Take
Well,
care,
that would be
everybody.
great. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, good. Do. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Paul.
No, you still got me.
Not Paul, I mean
Pete.
Pete,
yeah.
there we go.
Starts with a P. Come on. It's late.
He's probably moved on to other things that he has to do to get ready for his own situation. Paul, anybody get any feedback, any comments, anything we need to discuss before, anything we need to improve or do differently before we launch into Friday?
We do need to take a break after the breakout session.
Yeah, this last 2 hours has been long. So
Yeah.
it seems like we need one more break in there.
My back teeth are having motorboat races.
Yeah, I definitely have been anxious here to take a facilities break.
Okay, now you guys, I will tell you that sometimes I just get rolling, and I have absolutely no problem with Leslie, Mike, Eric saying, "Hey, Paul, any chance of a break?" And I'll say, of course.
You know, when I've done workshops, Paul, I tell people right at the beginning of the day that I'm guilty of not giving breaks. So if somebody has to throw something at me to say, Mike, we need a break. So I appreciate that. But anything else? How did your session go when you were in the breakout rooms?
So there's basically nobody did the homework. So we're starting out a little bit behind. So I just spent the entire time walking through the process of how to do key factors and pointed out to them that this particular application basically fills out the tour for you as you go. So
yeah, we had very similar conversations, Leslie, and talked a lot about, like Paul said, cutting and pasting from the application to do your key factors. I reminded them, it doesn't take a lot of time to do this, all that same kind of stuff. I think I had maybe two people who did the homework. I think I got an email from Sydney McLeod. She looks like she did a pretty decent job, but she's not the one that sent me anything. But like you, I don't think anybody really did a lot of effort on it.
And I think at the end of the day, there's, having just step by step, here's the first step. Okay, here's the second step. Here's the third step. You guys are going to be fine. Any questions about how to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, how about we do one more?
Yeah.
You guys got it? Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not where you overthink. The next step is where you overthink. This is not it.
Right. Well, and I reinforced to them, Leslie, to that point, I reinforced to them that Paul's created this worksheet. It is very easy to do key factors from that worksheet.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it was when I was in Leslie's room that I said, just to what Leslie said, don't overthink this. I can do a key factors worksheet in half an hour to 45 minutes because you're just looking for the answer and then pulling it over there. And
yeah, what I told them too is that this particular application, there's not going to be any wasted words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything they put in there, you can rest assured it's important in some way, shape, or form.
I do think though, Paul, if I were to do this again, I would have any pre-work be literally watch the videos, make yourself familiar with stuff, but then we'll literally tell you when you walk in here, what we want you to do to get started on key factors. I think it's really hard because we have, I think it's at one point it was 16 new examiners. I think for a new examiner, trying to actually start doing stuff before you've had these kinds of conversations or a chance to talk, it is really easy to overthink and get overwhelmed right out of the chute.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although I remember back the 90s and the early 2000s, when you went to examiner training,
yep,
you did a full feedback report before you ever set foot. And
I know.
When you went to training, you had every item with strengths and opportunities for improvement, and you handed it in as you walked in. And if you didn't have it, you didn't go to training. It was awful.
I probably would have never come back after the first year. That would have.
I was going to say, but Paul, you and I both know that that's a large part of why Baldrige struggles today.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It was brutal. That national
approach. They made it so academic and so hard that it's like, I'm going to go find another way.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to change, right? Is to make it easier to get people to get started. And I know where Susan was the one, with the regarding the questions and stuff, and she and trying to think of the woman that works with her at High Plains Library. They're both trying to get the Baldrige initiative going out at High Plains Library, right? And I've talked with them enough to know that they are overthinking them. The better they can become examiners, the easier it's going to flow for them, even trying to lead their effort. So I think this is, they're really committed to trying to make this work themselves so they can bring it back to their organization. And there are at least, of the new examiners, I know the Veterans Administration, because we have 2 from there, and then there's the college that has 1. That when I talked to those folks and said, why do you want to be examiners? It's because their organizations are looking at Baldrige. So the more I can make this easy, the more I can go back to some of them and say, let me help you with the next step.
Good.
Yeah, the credit union too. Quite a few from there.
Well, I've actually been putting the pressure on Steve Schmidl on that one because, he's the board chair and that's his credit union, saying, Steve, you guys at some point got to decide what you're doing at Westera.
Yeah.
Besides having me training your examiners. But, all right. Well, anything else we need to cover this afternoon? We'll do Friday, and then the team leads we're on for Monday, and we'll figure out how to. So if I'm hearing it right, we're saying we want the 3 teams to all use the same consolidated key factors as they start.
Yeah, so that was kind of a surprise, but it totally makes sense. And it's one thing to do independent review independently, but and then bring everybody around for consensus, and then further on for the single consensus. But having common key factors, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
right.
I think.
And I guess I'll be a little surprised if there's much variation from the 3 teams.
Yeah, especially with this application, right?
That's what I mean with this application, right? I've said it before. My last examiner experience was a reasonably mature, not this mature applicant. And when I even got the consensus, I was stunned because the independent review comments were all very similar. And it was one of the easiest consensuses I'd ever done because, everybody saw the same stuff.
So are there any alliances that, like RMPEx or over here on the Center for Performance Excellence over here in the East, are any of those organizations been through the Baldrige program themselves?
You mean as applicants?
Uh-huh.
Oh, God forbid.
Really?
No, there's never been an alliance member that's been a Baldrige applicant. No, this is actually a conversation we've had with the board to say we're going to try and be one of the first. Supposedly Texas has tried, but they've supposedly written an application, but they've never submitted it. But we'll see.
Heidi made that suggestion and she got laughed out of the room.
No, we have a board right now that's very much in favor of it.
That's because we have a new board.
If you guys go down that path, I'd like to be involved for sure. That would be awesome.
Well, it won't be next year, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, I don't expect it to be this year, next year, maybe even not the year after that, but when it comes time, I would definitely like to be involved.
Yeah, I will tell you, as a board, every board meeting, because I got them to commit to monthly board meetings, so I get 2 hours at a time every month. and we are walking through org profile stuff every month.
Yeah.
Every month we can. We have some
Yeah.
fiduciary responsibility to do certain things, but anytime we're not doing that, we're working on our org profile right now.
Yeah, and you know, Mike, don't wait until they say, okay, we're going to put together an application. If you do nothing but put together the organizational profile and get agreement with the board that this is an accurate organizational profile, you will have vaulted yourself forward of just about any state program out there.
This is a sidebar conversation, and I'm happy to have it, but I actually, in our last meeting, I have what we believe to be strategic challenges, strategic opportunities, our strengths. We have a bunch of that stuff that we've walked through, but it's a yin and yang kind of thing, right? It's that long-term what you want to be versus you got to do something tomorrow to make sure RMPEx has more people getting engaged, and that's the constant tussle I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go forward.
Yep.
Well,
hey
Eric,
guys, I gotta run.
I do too. I literally have 40 minutes and then I got to get on another call here and I got to go grab some dinner to eat. So
I have virtual happy hour with my neighbors in 25 minutes.
Nice. See
You'll
you
have
guys
to-
Friday.
thanks
See you
for Friday.